The morning had started like any other in Haven Point, the last human refuge untouched by the undead scourge. Nestled between mountains and shielded by electrified fences, the settlement had survived for 7 long months. 50 residents remained, the last souls clinging to a semblance of normalcy. They grew their own food, filtered rainwater, and held on to rules forged in the early days of collapse. But peace was a fragile illusion, and by dusk, it would crack wide open. Jenna Talbot stood on the south tower, rifle slung over her back, eyes tracing the tree line. Every morning, she scanned the perimeter. It was routine. Boring. Safe. Or so it had been until now. She noticed movement in the brush, slow, staggered, rhythmic. Her breath caught. Movement, she called, and within seconds, radios crackled through Haven Point. At first, the council dismissed it. Could be deer, said Martin, the supply chief. Happens sometimes. But Jenna's voice didn't waver. It's not deer. They're too slow. Too quiet. By noon, 3 more had spotted the shapes weaving between trees. Survivors who once trusted the forest to stay silent now grew tense. Weapons were cleaned. Emergency kits checked. The alarm system, long unused, was tested. Something was wrong, everyone could feel it in their bones. When night fell, Haven Point held its breath. The moon cast pale light across the compound's outer field. The gates were locked. Guards doubled. Still, it happened, fast, silent, and impossible. The southern fence, reinforced steel mesh powered by a solar grid, had a blind spot no one noticed before. A tree branch had grown through the wiring, separating the mesh from the sensor. It took only one. Just one. It came through just after midnight, crawling, barely more than a skeleton in tattered clothes. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and its jaw clicked with hunger. It had no tongue to scream, no lungs to moan. Silent as death itself. It dragged its body under the shadow of the main tower. No one saw it until it had already bitten Davis, the mechanic who'd gone to check the wiring after a flicker in the lights. Davis's scream shattered the calm like glass underfoot. By the time Jenna and the others arrived, the creature was already dead, riddled with bullets. But Davis had a gash on his forearm. He trembled, face pale. I didn't see it. It was just there. Chaos erupted. The council met immediately. Some demanded Davis be quarantined. Others called for exile. Martin said what many thought but feared to voice, we're not safe anymore. The vote was quick. Davis would be placed in isolation, under guard, until they knew for sure. But no one knew for sure. No one had seen a bite victim survive. Ever. Davis begged them not to lock him away. He swore he felt fine. But Jenna knew better. She'd lost her brother to a bite. The infection didn't show right away. Sometimes it took hours. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roofs, and thunder masked the sounds that followed. In the dark, with everyone focused on Davis, no one noticed the second breach. 3 more infected slipped through the compromised fence. This time, they didn't crawl. They ran. They struck the north wing first, where the livestock was kept. No humans were there, but the screaming of the animals alerted the town. Lights came on. Guns raised. Panic spread like fire. Jenna and her team moved fast. She ordered 2 to flank left while she moved right, eyes sharp, adrenaline surging. A figure bolted from behind the barn, fast, snarling, human-shaped. Jenna didn't hesitate. 1 clean shot to the head. It dropped instantly. Another appeared near the stables. Then another. 3 down. But how many more? By dawn, the compound was eerily silent again. The breach had been patched. The 3 infected burned. But the damage was done. 4 people were missing. 1 confirmed bitten. Livestock gone. The illusion of safety shattered. The next morning, the council convened again. The vote was grim. "We abandon Haven Point," Martin said. "It's compromised. We can't defend it anymore." But Jenna slammed her hand on the table. "No. We don't run. We rebuild. We reinforce. We fight. This place was built to last, and I won't let fear decide for us." She looked around at the faces of those who'd fought beside her, laughed with her, shared grief and hope for nearly a year. "We stay. The 50 of us. We hold the line." A long silence followed. Then a slow nod. Then another. Until the vote turned, 50 against the undead. 50 who refused to run. But what none of them knew was that the forest now whispered with more than wind. The dead had found them. And they weren't finished. The sun rose sluggishly over Haven Point, casting a pale golden hue across the battered compound. Rain had soaked the soil, and smoke still lingered in the air from the fires set to burn the infected corpses. The 50 survivors gathered near the main square, their faces drawn and weary, eyes red from a sleepless night filled with gunfire and dread. Jenna stood before them, shoulders squared, voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "We stay," she repeated. "We rebuild. We fortify. This place is ours, and I say we don't give it up." Some nodded. Others looked away. A few, like Clara, the nurse, and Tomas, the gate engineer, shifted nervously, torn between loyalty and survival instinct. Martin crossed his arms, jaw tight. "You want us to stay and fight? After last night?" "Jenna, we're not soldiers. We're farmers, cooks, mechanics." "You're survivors," she replied. "We've lasted this long. That means something." Davis, pale and sweating inside a locked shed guarded by 2 armed volunteers, had grown quieter with each hour. No one mentioned him now. They all knew what was coming. The unspoken truth lay heavy in the air: Davis wouldn't survive the day. They'd seen it before. Fever. Seizures. Rage. But no one wanted to say it aloud. "The vote stands," Martin said grimly. "All in favor of staying, raise your hand." One by one, hands rose, some trembling, others defiant. When the count was done, 38 to 12 had chosen to stay. Jenna exhaled. Relief washed over her, brief, but real. "We start now," she said. "Double the fences. Dig trenches. Make this place into a wall they can't break through." The next 24 hours moved with a desperate urgency. The infected hadn't returned, yet, but they all knew it was only a matter of time. Everyone was assigned a job. Even the children helped stack supplies. The air buzzed with the sound of hammers, metal grinders, and barking orders. Fear worked like fuel. Jenna's group reinforced the blind spots in the fence with barbed wire, steel sheets, and motion sensors repurposed from old hunting equipment. Clara and her team converted the old storage unit into a full quarantine zone, just in case. But inside the shed, Davis began to change. He stopped eating. Then speaking. The fever soaked through his clothes, and his eyes glazed with a milky sheen. At night, he thrashed, groaning and slamming into the walls. The 2 guards outside flinched at every sound. By dawn, he went silent. Clara approached Jenna. "It's time." Jenna gave a single nod, jaw clenched. "I'll do it." They unlocked the door cautiously. Davis sat slumped against the far wall, unmoving. His breathing, if there was any, couldn't be heard. Jenna raised her rifle slowly. "Davis?" she asked, stepping closer. Suddenly, he lunged. It was pure reflex. Jenna fired. The shot echoed through the compound, stopping hearts for a brief second. Silence returned. They burned Davis's body outside the north fence. No one spoke. No one protested. It had to be done. That night, while the others tried to sleep, Jenna stayed up in the command shack, staring at the surveillance monitors. She watched the tree line. Watched the stillness. And then, just after 2 a.m., she saw it. Movement. Dozens of shapes. Pale, twitching. Heads jerking unnaturally. Not one. Not three. A swarm. Her heart thudded. She radioed Martin. "They're coming." Within minutes, the compound was awake. Lights flicked on. Alarms sounded. People scrambled to walls and towers. Guns loaded. Flares readied. From the trees, they came, like shadows breaking loose from the night. The infected charged, teeth bared, shrieking in unnatural howls that curdled the blood. Some slammed into the fence and sparked against the wiring. Others tried to climb. The new defenses held, barely. But the infected were relentless. Driven. Jenna shouted orders over the noise. "Aim for the head. Don't let them breach." Tomas, from the tower, spotted something strange. "Jenna, they're circling." "What?" "They're not just charging. They're looking for weak spots." As if directed by some unseen intelligence, the infected tested the fence, moving like wolves sniffing for blood. That night, the survivors held the line. 2 were injured. One, an older woman named Greta, was killed before she could reach the tower steps. But the fence held. The infected withdrew by sunrise, melting back into the trees like ghosts. Everyone was shaken. Jenna stood on the southern wall as dawn broke. "They're changing," she whispered. "They're learning." Martin came up beside her, his face pale. "We can't win a war against things that think." Jenna didn't answer. Because deep down, she agreed. But she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. They had chosen to stay. Now they had to survive. The quiet after the attack was heavier than any scream. Sunlight touched the compound like it didn't belong there anymore, hesitant, cold. The air stank of ash and burning rot. Survivors moved through Haven Point like ghosts, their eyes hollow, their steps slower. No one asked how many were lost. They all knew. Greta was gone. 2 others were injured and under quarantine. For now, they were still alive. Jenna hadn't slept. She stood on the east wall, scanning the trees. Her hands gripped the railing until her knuckles whitened. The infected had changed. They moved together now, not mindless, but with purpose. She'd seen it in their eyes, in the way they retreated without being commanded. It terrified her in ways she couldn't admit out loud. Martin joined her, holding a tin mug of cold coffee. "We need answers." She didn't look away from the woods. "From who?" He gestured toward the trees. "From whatever the hell is happening out there." "We're not explorers," she said. "We're trying to stay alive." Martin hesitated, then said what he'd been turning over in his mind all morning. "We can't just keep waiting for them to come. We need to find out what's drawing them here." That night, a plan formed. A scouting team, just 3 volunteers, would head out before dawn to track the infected's movements. Find out where they went. Maybe even where they came from. Jenna didn't like it. But she agreed. "Keep your distance," she told them. "Don't engage. Get in, get out. Radio in every hour." Ben, the youngest of the team, nodded nervously. Clara gave him a hug before they left. "If it gets bad," she whispered, "don't be a hero." They slipped into the woods before first light, gear packed, rifles ready, nerves tight as wire. Back in Haven Point, Jenna paced. Every hour, the radio chirped with updates. East Ridge cleared. No movement. Found a burned-out van. Blood, but no bodies. Still tracking footprints. Heading deeper. Then, silence. 3 hours passed. Then 4. Jenna tried not to panic. Static wasn't always bad. Sometimes radios just lost signal. But this silence felt wrong. At hour 5, the radio flared to life. Ben's voice, shaky, hushed. Jenna, they're not wandering. They're gathering. The line crackled. Another voice, panicked, shouted something unclear. Gunfire burst through the transmission. Then silence again. Jenna's heart sank. Ben? Sarah? Marcus? Respond. Nothing. She turned to Martin. Get a team ready. We go now. Jenna. No arguments. Within minutes, 6 were armed and moving. Jenna led the way, her boots crunching dead leaves, eyes alert. The deeper they went, the more signs they found. Trampled grass. Blood smears. Shell casings. A broken radio. Then they found Sarah. Or what was left of her. She'd been torn apart, not eaten, just killed. Her body was surrounded by strange markings carved into nearby trees. Symbols. Crude spirals. Circles crossed with claw marks. It made Jenna's stomach twist. Ben and Marcus were gone. No blood trails. No bodies. Only footprints, leading farther into the forest. The team didn't follow. Not that day. They carried Sarah back and burned her beside Greta. Clara said a few words, but they all knew it wasn't enough. Later, Jenna stood outside the medical tent, watching Clara examine the 2 injured survivors. They still hadn't turned. No fever. No seizures. No signs of infection. How long's it been now? Jenna asked. 36 hours. That's not possible. Clara shrugged. I know. But maybe some people are immune. Or maybe it's mutating. Jenna's mind reeled. A new kind of infected. Survivors not turning. Symbols in the woods. Nothing made sense anymore. That night, Jenna climbed to the watchtower alone. She didn't trust sleep. Not anymore. Just past midnight, movement stirred in the trees again. Not an attack. Just, watching. Figures stood still beneath the canopy. Not charging. Just there. She grabbed the binoculars. They weren't fresh infected. These looked different. Wounds stitched crudely. Eyes wide, almost alert. And one, a tall figure wrapped in torn military gear, raised its hand. It didn't wave. It pointed. Directly at her. Jenna's chest tightened. She backed away from the scope. When she looked again, the figures were gone. She didn't call it in. Didn't wake anyone. Instead, she whispered to the night. You're learning, she said. So are we. The war hadn't ended. It was only beginning. Jenna didn't sleep the night after the figures appeared. She stayed in the tower until the sky turned gray with morning. The image of that tall infected, or whatever it was, pointing directly at her refused to leave her mind. It hadn't moved like the others. It hadn't groaned or twitched. It stood tall. Aware. Intentional. By dawn, she climbed down the tower with a racing heart and a heavy burden. She needed to warn the others, but how could she explain what she'd seen without sounding unhinged? She gathered Martin, Clara, and Tomas inside the main hall. There's something new out there, she said. They're evolving. Martin raised an eyebrow. Evolving? Jenna, they're dead. No. Not all of them. Some are changing. I saw them with my own eyes. One of them pointed at me. Like it knew who I was. Clara looked alarmed. Are you sure it wasn't your mind playing tricks? I know what I saw, Jenna said, voice hard. Tomas, always the quiet one, finally spoke. Maybe they're organizing. That would explain how they're moving as a group. The markings, the attacks. What if someone, or something, is guiding them? Martin shook his head. That's insane. Jenna leaned forward. Is it any more insane than undead walking the earth? Silence followed. They decided not to share the sighting with the rest of the compound. Not yet. Fear was already spreading like mold in the walls. More would only make it worse. But it was too late to stop the fear. That same morning, 3 more people vanished. No screams. No broken fences. Just gone. Their bunks were untouched. Guns left behind. It was as if they'd walked into the forest willingly, or had been taken. Jenna called a full compound meeting in the square. 50 had become 46. 3 are missing, she said bluntly. We don't know how. But we will find out. The crowd murmured. Some angry. Some scared. An older man named Warren stepped forward. Maybe they ran. Maybe they realized staying here was suicide. Jenna stared at him. Then why leave their weapons? No one answered. Martin spoke next. We lock down the perimeter. No one leaves alone. We double the night watch. Clara added, and we begin tracking everything. Every shift, every movement, every noise. That night, no one slept. Tension hung in the air like smoke. The watch posts were filled. Floodlights flickered on and off as the power grid struggled under the new load. Around 2 a.m., Jenna heard it, a faint voice on the outer speaker. A whisper, barely audible. Help. She froze. Clara, she radioed. Are you at the medical tent? Yes. Why? Did you hear that? Clara's voice grew sharp. What did you hear? Jenna turned up the speaker. Nothing now. Just the static of the wind. I think it was Ben. The boy who had vanished with the scouting team. Clara was silent. That's not possible. Jenna grabbed her rifle and flashlight, heart hammering. She met Martin at the eastern gate, where the sound had been loudest. You really think it was him? He asked. I don't know, she said. But we're checking. They opened the gate just enough to slip through and scanned the tree line. Fog rolled low across the ground. The forest felt suffocating. Then, they saw him. Ben. Or something that looked like him. He stood about 20 feet away, barefoot, clothes torn, arms hanging loose. His eyes were dull. But he was breathing. Ben? Jenna called. He didn't respond. Just stared. She stepped closer. Ben, it's me. Jenna. Are you hurt? Still no reply. Martin aimed his rifle. Something's wrong. Then Ben opened his mouth. Not to speak. To scream. It was inhuman. A screech like tearing metal and splintering bone. From the trees behind him, figures emerged, fast, twitching, silent until they charged. Jenna fired first. Martin followed. The figures rushed forward with shocking speed, but the pair held their ground long enough to retreat back through the gate. They slammed it shut and hit the lockdown lever. Alarms wailed across the compound. Floodlights spun wildly. The infected didn't try to breach this time. They just stood at the edge of the trees, watching. Ben among them. Clara met Jenna at the gate. What happened? Jenna could barely speak. They're using him as bait. Martin rubbed his face with trembling hands. They didn't even try to get through. They just wanted us to see. To know they have him, Clara whispered. Jenna looked back at the trees. Ben was gone now. But something new had begun. The undead weren't just predators anymore. They were hunters. And they were sending a message. The day after Ben's appearance at the tree line, no one spoke above a whisper. The compound's silence was heavier than gunfire. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something deeper, a quiet understanding that Haven Point was no longer theirs. It belonged to the woods now. And whatever had taken Ben. Jenna hadn't left the command post all night. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her fingers trembling as she flipped through old records, maps, supply logs, anything that might reveal a pattern. Something they'd missed. Some clue. Clara entered carrying a tin of bitter coffee. "You've been up 2 nights straight," she said softly. "You'll collapse." "I can't stop," Jenna replied. "They're not just attacking. They're hunting us. And now they're using our people." Clara sat across from her. "Do you think Ben's still him?" Jenna hesitated. I think he's not fully turned. But I don't think he's free either." Clara nodded slowly, gripping her mug tighter. "Then maybe there's something else going on. Something controlling them." That thought had been growing in Jenna's mind, too, like a splinter under her skin. Then Tomas burst in, face pale, hands shaking. "You need to see this." They followed him to the southeast wall where the scorched remains of the old watch station still smoldered. He pointed to a cracked slab beneath the ash. "Wind blew the last of the debris off this morning. Look." Carved into the concrete were marks, not like the ones on the trees. These were older. Cleaner. Symbols in a spiral formation. Circles. Arrows. Words in faded black ink, barely legible. Facility 12, do not approach. Jenna crouched and traced the letters. "This wasn't part of our construction." Clara knelt beside her. "Maybe this place was built over something else. Something before Haven Point." Tomas nodded. "I looked it up in the old files. Before the outbreak, this area was owned by a private research company. Bioaegis Group. They ran something underground, military-level clearance. It's never been talked about in council meetings." Jenna stood slowly. If they were experimenting here before the outbreak, maybe whatever they created didn't die when the world did. "Facility 12 might be the source," Clara said. Jenna looked toward the forest. "Then we need to find it." That afternoon, a small team prepared to leave. Jenna, Martin, Clara, and Tomas. 4 people, all capable, all trusted. The others stayed behind to hold the line, just in case the infected returned while they were gone. They moved through the woods like shadows, rifles raised, steps careful. The trees were too quiet, as if even the birds had learned to stay silent. Using the symbols and the vague coordinates scratched into the concrete slab, they found the edge of a buried access road. Overgrown. Cracked. Nearly swallowed by vines. Half a mile down, they found it. A metal hatch hidden beneath a pile of broken stones. It took Tomas nearly 20 minutes to bypass the rusted lock, but when it finally groaned open, the air that escaped was sharp, sterile, and old. Jenna clicked on her flashlight. The stairs spiraled down into darkness. The smell changed the deeper they went. Dust. Metal. And something else. Decay. They reached a hallway with glass panels on either side. Inside, Shattered labs, overturned desks, and thick dried blood coated the floor. What the hell was this place? Martin whispered. They reached a door labeled Observation Room, Sector A. The electronic lock had long since failed, but the emergency release worked. Inside was a wall of monitors, now dead, and a giant map pinned to the board. Facility 12 stretched farther underground than they'd imagined. Several sectors. Labs. Holding cells. Testing chambers. Jenna stepped closer to the map. A red circle was drawn around one location, Project Revenant, Core Sector. Taped to the corner was a single sticky note, yellowed with time. In faded handwriting, it read. They don't rot because they're not dead. Not really. Clara gasped behind her. That's why Ben didn't turn completely. That's why the infected are evolving. They're not just infected, Jenna whispered. They were changed. Engineered. Martin swore under his breath. We built Haven Point on top of the nightmare. Suddenly, the lights in the observation room flickered. Power. Something still on down here, Tomas said. Then they heard it, footsteps echoing from the corridor they'd come through. Slow. Deliberate. They weren't alone. Jenna raised her rifle, heart pounding. Lights out. No sound, she ordered. The team ducked behind a lab desk. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Then, silence. Jenna didn't breathe. The door creaked. A figure entered the room. Tall. Wrapped in remnants of a Bio-Aegis uniform. Its skin was pale, stretched thin over muscle. Its eyes were cloudy, but not mindless. It turned its head. Sniffed the air. Then, in a hoarse, guttural voice, it said a single word. Home. The air inside Facility 12 seemed to pulse with something ancient and wrong. Jenna's heart pounded so loudly she was afraid the creature would hear it. The thing stood just inside the door, unmoving. Its head tilted slightly, as if listening. The word it had spoken, home, still echoed in her ears like a curse. Martin's hand tightened around his rifle. Clara covered her mouth to muffle her breath. Tomas, crouched behind a cabinet, was already calculating escape routes. Then, without warning, the figure turned and walked back down the corridor, its steps echoing into the dark like a ticking clock. Jenna whispered, "Go. Now." The team slipped out the side exit of the observation room and moved deeper into the abandoned facility, careful not to step on glass or loose tiles. Every hallway looked the same, rusted doors, broken lights, dried blood smeared across walls. They finally stopped in a room labeled Core Testing, Project Revenant. Inside were shattered cryochambers, monitors with cracked screens, and notebooks filled with scrawled formulas. In the far corner, a wall-length chalkboard still held diagrams, of brains, nerves, and symbols eerily similar to the ones found carved into trees near Haven Point. Clara picked up a dusty file from the floor. "Listen to this," she whispered. "Revenant Protocol, subject reanimation through controlled neuroregeneration. Objective, preserve motor function and increase behavioral compliance. Notes, early versions failed. But subjects demonstrated learning abilities and coordinated attack patterns." "Coordinated," Jenna echoed. "Just like what we've seen." Tomas found a journal beneath a collapsed desk. He opened it slowly. "This is someone's personal log. Not scientific. Day-to-day notes." He read aloud. Day 47. Subjects retain memory. One stared at me for over 2 hours without moving. I swear it recognized me. Day 93. They're not decaying. They've stopped needing food. They adapt. We made something worse than death. Day 128. Facility breach. I locked Sector C. If anyone finds this, burn it all. Don't let them reach the surface. Martin looked sick. So they didn't just make the infected. They made the ones we're fighting now. And we built our last refuge on top of their grave, Jenna said grimly. Suddenly, a noise came from down the hall, not footsteps this time. A scream. Familiar. Jenna's blood went cold. Ben. She ran before the others could stop her, flashlight beam slicing through the dark as her boots pounded the floor. The scream came again, muffled, panicked. She rounded a corner and found a heavy steel door sealed shut, a flickering panel above it glowing red. Martin caught up. Don't do it, he warned. It could be a trap. Jenna pressed her ear to the door. Ben. It's Jenna. Are you in there? There was silence, then a voice. Weak. Raspy. Jenna, please. Clara arrived next, breathless. We can't open it without a power reset. The controls are behind the west corridor. Tomas took off without another word. Inside the sealed room, Ben's voice came again. They keep talking to me. I don't sleep. I see their thoughts. They're all connected. Jenna's eyes widened. Connected? How? They hear each other. Through pain. Through memory. And one of them, leads. Who? Jenna asked. But Ben only sobbed. Tomas returned moments later, flipping switches on a rusted circuit board. Sparks flew. Lights blinked. Then, a hiss. The door creaked open slowly. Jenna stepped in first. Ben lay in a corner, pale, shivering, his arms covered in strange markings, symbols carved into the skin with something crude. His eyes met hers. They're not like before, he whispered. They don't just want to eat. They want to replace us. Behind him, 3 empty beds lined the wall. Chains hung loose from each. Jenna swallowed hard. Clara, she called. Get him stable. They helped Ben up, draping his arms over their shoulders. Did you see the leader? Clara asked. Ben's voice cracked. Not clearly. But I heard them call it the speaker. It gives them orders. Through screams. As they moved back toward the exit, they passed by the main chamber, a place they hadn't explored yet. But the doors opened on their own. And standing inside was the tall figure from earlier, now joined by 2 others. Their heads tilted in unison. Their mouths didn't move, but a voice, clear, cold, echoed through the hall. You have seen too much. Jenna raised her rifle. Run. The group sprinted back toward the surface tunnel. The lights flickered wildly, and alarms that hadn't worked in decades suddenly blared. Facility 12 was waking up, and it wanted them gone. They burst out of the hatch, dragging Ben with them, slamming it shut behind them. Tomas welded it with a portable torch. Everyone collapsed onto the ground, gasping. Ben stared at the tree line ahead. They know we were down there. And now, they're coming. Jenna stood up, rifle still shaking in her hands. Then she looked toward Haven Point. They're not just infected. They're organized. And this place? It's not a refuge anymore. She turned to the others. It's a war zone. They returned to Haven Point at dusk, carrying the truth like a disease. The compound looked the same, fences holding, lights flickering, survivors patrolling the walls, but it wasn't the place they'd left that morning. Everything felt different now. Tainted. As if Facility 12 had changed more than just what they knew. Ben was weak but alive. Clara sedated him and placed him under quarantine, not because he was dangerous, but because he was haunted. Every time he closed his eyes, he mumbled words in a voice not his own. Jenna gathered the remaining survivors in the square. There's no easy way to say this, she began, standing atop the crate where they used to hold harvest announcements and birthday speeches. The infected aren't just undead. They were created. Engineered in the facility beneath us. Gasps. Murmurs. A child cried. Jenna pressed on. They're evolving. Learning. Following something called, the speaker, a leader. They're not feeding anymore. They're replacing us. And now that we've found their origin, they're coming. Martin stepped up beside her. We have two choices. Run and scatter, or stand and fight. No one moved at first. Then a voice rose from the back, Marcy, the schoolteacher. I say we fight. This place is our home. One by one, heads nodded. No speeches. No cheering. Just quiet, shared determination. Jenna set the plan in motion. The defenses were rebuilt with everything they had left. Spikes welded onto fences. Flammable traps set near the tree line. Backup generators moved to more secure locations. Everyone, even the injured, took a shift. As the sun dipped below the treetops, Haven Point braced for war. From the watchtower, Jenna scanned the horizon. She saw them, first as shadows between trees, then as shapes forming ranks. Dozens. Then hundreds. Pale. Still. And leading them, a figure taller than the rest. Wrapped in remnants of military gear. A face half covered in scar tissue and metal plating. The speaker. It raised one hand. The horde roared. And the siege began. The infected charged, not like wild animals, but like soldiers. They struck the eastern wall with such force that the metal groaned. Bullets flew. Explosions lit the night. Screams filled the air. Jenna barked into her radio, fall back to the secondary line. Let the traps work. As the first wave reached the inner perimeter, flames erupted from buried fuel tanks. Half a dozen infected burned, shrieking, collapsing, but the rest pressed on, unfazed. Martin and Tomas manned the north wall, firing until their rifles overheated. Clara dragged the wounded into the storage building, now converted into a field hospital. Ben, still pale, barely coherent, woke mid-battle. He stumbled to the window, eyes wide. They're calling, he whispered. Calling to me. Then his voice dropped to a tone not his own. Let us in. Clara spun around. Ben? No. Don't listen. He staggered backward, shaking his head violently. I can fight it. But they know everything I know. Our plans. Our weak points. Jenna heard this over the radio. Her stomach turned. Change the fallback zones, she ordered. Now. They shifted their defenses. But the speaker was already adapting. It moved with eerie grace, watching the flow of the fight, pointing toward weaknesses. When the infected breached the north gate, it didn't hesitate, it walked straight through the smoke. Jenna met it at the center of the compound. The two locked eyes across the burning courtyard. She raised her rifle. You want to replace us? It tilted its head. No. We want to become you. She fired. It dodged, impossibly fast. The bullet grazed its shoulder. It didn't bleed. It didn't flinch. Then it spoke again. You were built to die. We were built to adapt. More infected surged into the compound. Jenna fell back, covering civilians, leading a retreat into the greenhouse bunker. The remaining defenders held the line as long as they could. Some were dragged away. Others stood their ground to the last bullet. By midnight, nearly half of Haven Point was overrun. But the survivors inside the bunker, including Jenna, Clara, Tomas, Martin, and Ben, were alive. For now. Ben's hands trembled. They'll break through. They always do. Jenna didn't respond. She was staring at something on the emergency blueprint etched into the wall, an old tunnel marked, outbound water line, emergency evac only. Does it still connect to the forest? She asked Tomas. He nodded. Yeah. It was sealed. But I can open it. She turned to the others. Then that's our way out. Martin's voice cracked. You're going into the forest. Now? We're not running, Jenna said. We're going to end this. At the source. She looked at Ben. You're coming with us. Because the speaker wanted Ben. And she was done playing defense. The emergency water line tunnel was narrow, cold, and pitch black. The air stank of damp earth and rusted metal. Every step echoed like a warning. Jenna led the group, flashlight in one hand, rifle in the other. Behind her, Martin carried explosives. Tomas managed the map and route timing. Clara monitored Ben, still pale, shivering, but awake. His eyes flicked between fear and something far worse. They know, he said, voice hollow. Every step we take. They see it. Jenna didn't stop. Let them watch. We're coming for them. The plan was simple: get to the clearing marked Sector 0 on the old facility map, the place where Project Revenant had begun. End it at the source. The tunnel ended at a rusted hatch. Tomas used a battery torch to cut through the bolts. When it finally creaked open, they were greeted by the forest, dark, quiet, waiting. Jenna stepped out first, rifle up. The trees stood like sentinels. The air buzzed, unnatural, heavy with anticipation. They moved through the woods in silence. No infected. No movement. Just the faint whisper of wind through leaves. Then Ben stopped walking. He stared straight ahead, eyes wide. It's here. Before them stood a ring of broken stones. Ancient. Covered in the same spiral symbols they'd seen in the facility. In the center, a crater. Shallow. Blackened. Clara stepped forward. This is where it started. Tomas laid the explosives. If we take out whatever power source is buried under this, maybe we cut the connection. Sever the link between them. Martin nodded. Assuming we survive long enough to light the fuse. Then, the wind stopped. Jenna felt it before she saw them. The infected stepped from the shadows, encircling the crater. Dozens of them. Silent. Watching. And then, through the trees, the speaker emerged. Its face was barely human now, the skin drawn tight, mouth too wide, eyes like glass. Behind it came others like it. Not feral. Not mindless. Changed. The speaker raised a hand. Ben stepped forward. Don't, Clara whispered. But Ben wasn't moving on his own. His body trembled. His lips moved, though he didn't speak. Until suddenly, he did. I was chosen, he said, though the voice wasn't his. You built this world on death. We offer renewal. Perfect unity. We are not the end. We are the future. Jenna raised her rifle. You're not the future. You're what happens when humanity forgets to be human. Ben cried out. I can't stop them. The speaker moved closer. Jenna acted. She fired. The speaker jerked back, struck in the eye. It didn't fall, not yet, but the circle of infected trembled. Martin ran to the charges. Now! But one of the evolved infected lunged, slashing his leg. Tomas fired, dragging Martin back. Ben screamed, clutching his head. They're inside. Clara ran to him, grabbing his face. Ben, listen to me. You are not them. You're still here. Tears spilled down his cheeks. He looked at her, just for a second, and nodded. Tell Jenna to light it, he whispered. No. Tell her. Ben pulled away, sprinting toward the crater. The speaker turned, realizing too late. Ben threw himself into the center, pressing his hand to the detonator. Jenna shouted, "No!" The crater erupted in white fire. Heat slammed into the forest. The evolved infected screamed in unison, the sound like glass shattering across the sky. Jenna and the others were thrown to the ground. Then, silence. When she woke, the sky above was brighter. The air lighter. And the infected? Gone. No figures in the trees. No eyes in the dark. Just wind. And ashes. Clara knelt beside the crater's edge, tears streaking her soot-covered face. He did it. Martin limped over, arm around Tomas. He broke the link. Jenna stood slowly, every part of her aching. She looked around at what remained of the forest. And then, up toward the path that would take them home. Back to Haven Point. What was left of it? Back to the others. Back to rebuild. They walked in silence. No victory cheers. No smiles. But they were alive. And the speaker, the thing that had haunted them, was gone. At the edge of the clearing, Jenna stopped and looked back one last time. We were never safe, she whispered. But we were never helpless. Then she turned and led them toward the rising sun. Toward a new beginning.